Om Namasri Yatirajaya Vivekananda Sure Satchit Sukha Swarupaya Swamine Tapaharine. So we continue from where we left last time. We were discussing Swamiji's free translation of the Kurma Yoga, which the free translation which he had made, and he had inserted it at the end of the introduction to Raj Yoga. Now the verses which begin with after explaining that the dharana, if the mind can be fixed on the center for 12 seconds, say you are meditating on the heart center, and if you meditate for say 12 seconds, it will be known as a dharana. 12 such dharanas, that is 144 seconds, will be a dhyana, and 12 such dhyanas will be a samadhi. So 12 into 12, 144 into 12, that will be the total length of time when one can concentrate on a subject where there is no whole mind has become one big wave. It is known as one-formedness. Ekatanata. Ekatanata means there is only one wave which engulfs all other waves, and persistently that one wave exists. And exists. Can you hear me, all of you? Somebody has mentioned in the chat that
yes, Maharaj.
Yes, can hear. Okay, fine. Okay, just wanted to know because somebody messaged me. There is some problem with. So the 12 seconds of dharana, 12 seconds of concentration results in dharana, and then you will find that. Just a minute, I will have to silence. And then you will find 12 such seconds of dharana, then it gives rise to 144 seconds is dhyana, and if we multiply it by 12 times, the duration which gives rise to samadhi. Samadhi is attained only when you are able to focus, concentrate on a subject where the subject does not exist. Only they say there is only the meaning of the thought, only one way where the meaning of the object meditated upon exists, and it exists, not only exists, but it persists for a long time, say 144 seconds, then it becomes meditation, dhyana, and 144 into 12. So it's a huge figure. For so many seconds, if one can maintain that one-pointedness of mind, only the subject remains, only the object remains, the subject vanishes, the I vanishes, then one enters into samadhi. So this is what we discussed last time. So now there is another totally different subject which is discussed in the Kurma Purana, where yoga must not be practiced. What are the conditions under which a person cannot or should not practice yoga? Yoga can be practiced by anybody who fulfills certain basic conditions which we discussed. A summary of that was given in the previous classes by Kurma Purana as well as Swamiji. He said you have to practice the 5 yamas, 5 niyamas, then asana, pranayama, then we come to pratyahara. We discussed in great detail how pratyahara leads to, without these 4 stages, you cannot do dharana. Dharana is creating one big wave and holding on to it for 12 seconds. That dharana, when it deepens and you manage to keep it 12 times of a dharana, which is 144 seconds, if you maintain, it is known as dhyana. So dhyana is extremely difficult, as we can see here. But when even that has been persistently practiced, we come to a stage which is known as samadhi, which is very rare. Now, for practice of these things, yoga, as it is described above, there are certain places or certain situations where yoga cannot be practiced. So, according to our tradition, according to Kurma Purana, which was written thousands of years ago perhaps, the condition given is where there is fire or in water or on ground which is strewn with dry leaves. The reason being, this is a very simple explanation or simple reason why this is insisted upon. First of all, when there is fire, normally people used to retreat to the forests and for meditation because they found circumstances very suitable for meditation. There was a being no human contact, they would prefer to stay alone in kutiyas or maybe some residence under the tree where there is very little disturbance from human beings. But still, there will be the disturbance which is natural to such jungles or forests. But one of the conditions is there should not be any fire nearby. If there is fire around in that forest, then possibly your mind will be on the fire. You can't meditate peacefully. Or in water, or on ground which is strewn with dry. If there's too much of rain or water, then it becomes a big nuisance. So, and a ground which is strewn with dry leaves. Now, suppose there are a lot of dry leaves and the wind comes and then there's a lot of noise and the leaves come and disturb you. Naturally, it is not very good for meditation. So, these are the few things which are there in the forest, and one has to avoid this. Then there is where there are many ant hills. Now, when there are ant hills, that means either there are snakes or there are these big ants. So you should not be very near those things because when they come out, normally they say inside these ant hills, in winter especially, the snakes take shelter. If they don't have a better shelter, they just take shelter in these big ant hills. So these ant hills which have been painfully constructed by ants so that they can stay when there is a very cold climate outside, especially in winter. So that is where these ants store food, and they store food inside these ant hills, and they're supposed to hibernate or maybe stay inside for quite a few months. So these ant hills, if by accident it is disturbed, then all those ants will be all over the place and they might bite you, or there may be some snake hidden inside who may now and then come out for prey and he may harm you. So those places, ant hills should not be there nearby. Where there are wild animals or danger. Any wild animal, any forest or any jungle infested by wild animals is always a dangerous place because one cannot be secure in such surroundings. Then where four streets meet. If you are not in the forest, one's house should be preferably not positioned where four streets meet, because that is the place where there is a lot of traffic jam, or in those days perhaps carts and carriages used to go, and one has to stop near the four streets, and the traffic very often has a tendency to get congested. So there's a lot of noise. So where four streets meet, where there is too much of noise. So in general, any place which is busy, like the four streets where common streets meet, that is a place which is full of noise. So that those places also should be avoided. Where there are many wicked persons, yoga must not be practiced. Now this is very important, because if you know some place is not a suitable place, some den of thieves or somebody lives, there is a history of that place being haunted or a lot of wicked people or evil spirits staying. So it's naturally not a nice place because the vibrations there are likely to be bad. So yoga should not be practiced where there are many wicked persons. This applies more particularly to India. Now Swamiji says this is particularly applicable to India because of the huge number of people who reside in such towns and cities where there is a crowd. Then there is a likelihood of a lot of evil people staying or concentrating on one particular area. So it may not be a very good idea to stay in congested areas or practice yoga in congested areas or where there's a lot of people, many of whom are wicked or having evil intentions. So they create a very aura of wickedness around them, and that creates a lot of disturbed thoughts, or disturbed waves are created in the mind as a result of uh, this kind of atmosphere around you. Then Swamiji says, do not practice yoga when the body feels very lazy or ill. For some reason, that is why Holy Mother used to say, if one has sickness or one is very lazy, then one need not practice serious meditation. He can do japa. There's no hard and fast rule for doing japa, but as far as meditation is concerned, one is not likely to, because his prana is disturbed. When the body feels lazy or ill, there is a lot of tamas for whatever reason. Maybe because of tamasic food or consuming of tamasic food, or ahara can also mean a lot of negative inputs are given to the mind and one's mind has become very depressive. Under such circumstances, the body does not feel well. It's not just physical sickness is what is meant here. What this verse says, that when the body feels lazy, there can be several reasons. There may be some mental reasons also, that when the mind is morose, the mind is not well, the mind is not feeling well, it can impact or affect the body and the body becomes lazy. Sometimes it's lazy by sheer tiredness. So in that case, a lot of yogis say that yoga cannot be practiced properly. So when it is or ill, when one is physically ill, in a gross way one is ill, then it becomes very difficult to keep the mind steady. The mind always goes towards the body and towards the illness. Suppose one has a headache or some kind of fever. So that dis-ease which they have in the body, the lack of ease disease actually means you are not at ease. Your annamaya kosha is not at ease with your pranamaya kosha. So somewhere there is a disturbance, and that disturbance causes a kind of uneasiness, and that uneasiness or illness, as it is known as, this physical illness, is not very much conducive to practice of yoga. Or when the mind is very miserable and sorrowful. Now, even if the body is okay, sometimes we see that the mind is in a very disturbed state. So when one is in a very disturbed state, you will observe that the mind does not settle down on something. Okay, one cannot focus, one cannot concentrate on anything. So when the body is already, there are waves of misery and sorrow which are overwhelming the mind, you cannot expect such a person to create a steady wave of positivity or a wave of happiness which can overpower it. It's a struggle. He's struggling against his own mind. The waves are rising with such rapid succession. The waves of misery and the waves of sorrow which have overwhelmed the mind, they become so disturbing in their nature that the single wave which ought to stabilize all the other waves, the single wave of dharana for 144 seconds or 12 seconds, even if you try, the other waves will come and disturb it. It will be very difficult for the sorrowful or miserable mind to meditate. So, what is the solution Kurma Purana is giving? Go to a place which is well hidden, Well hidden because there is no not much disturbance in such places. There is no unnecessary occupation or socializing or uh, intermixing with people. If it is well hidden, people do not know. So that's why Thakur used to say normally Sattvic people, they go into their, in India they use a mosquito curtain. So if somebody goes into the mosquito curtain, it is assumed that he is fast asleep or is at least trying to sleep. So Latu Maharaj and others, they used to go into the mosquito curtain but not go to sleep. But lying down, they used to do meditation, do japa if they cannot sit. So such places where there is no light, where it is well hidden and where people don't come to disturb you is the best place for meditation. These are some of the physical arrangements or the physical environment which one has to create to so that it is conducive for meditation, especially when one is when the beginning, one is starting to meditate. When one is in an advanced state, then he can meditate anywhere he likes, even in the busy streets. A perfected yogi has no problem. He doesn't mind meditating even on the crossroads or busy streets or even where people uh, are evil minded and all those things. They don't disturb such a person. Even the food does not disturb. So one of the Sri Ramakrishna used to say that Naren is one such person who is like a blazing fire. So he is so pure that no matter where he goes, he can simply settle down and meditate. But these are exceptions. Such people are not very common. So that's why Kurma Purana says, do not choose dirty places. Do go to a place which is well hidden and where people do not come to disturb you. But do not go to dirty places. Rather choose beautiful scenery or a room in your own house which is beautiful. It may not be very beautifully decorated, but at least it should be tidy. And there should be less clutter in those areas where you are meditating. Maybe it's a corner of a room or it's maybe the entire room can be converted into a place where there is absolutely minimum clutter. You don't, things are not thrown around and the mind is more gathered. It's easy to gather the mind in such places. But if things are scattered, if they are cluttered with so many things, then it becomes difficult to focus the mind on one particular subject to the exclusion of other subjects. So to prevent that, there should be less clutter externally in the room so that there is less clutter in the mind. So they are intimately connected. So Swamiji says, Kurma Purana says that choose a place where there is a beautiful scenery. You see, even though there is a lot of things in nature, but if you go to a peaceful place, a peaceful and beautiful place, you can see a strange kind of harmony. You don't have to be an artist to appreciate a beautiful scenery. The moment you go there and see the calm lake or a huge mountain, icy mountains, that's why these people chose such places for meditation. The mind automatically settles because there is so much harmony, natural harmony in nature. Only when mankind tampers with this harmony, nature appears to be very terrible. Of course, there are natural forces because of which sometimes this harmony is disturbed, like thunderstorms, heavy rains, and all. But normally, in a very good weather where there is a beautiful scenery, or if you go to a room which has been kept or maintained without any clutter or unnecessary things, if it is plain, simple, and beautiful, and you have some incense sticks and other things, these are the minimum things which one can do to create a room which is beautiful for the mind. Beautiful not just for the eyes, but also beautiful for the mind. So the mind is not unnecessarily disturbed when it enters that particular corner of the room or that room. So that is the idea. Now, when you practice, the first thing is once you get this kind of environment or create this kind of environment for yoga, then what are the first steps? These steps are very common to those who have taken initiation, they know. The first thing you are asked is to pray for the welfare of others. So when you practice, first salute all the ancient yogis, the Guru Parampara, Yo Brahmanam. There is a beautiful verse which is recited to all the gurus of Vedanta who have come and contributed their ideas, thoughts to humankind. So humankind has benefited a lot from all these yogis, ancient yogis. So there is a prayer, Yo Brahmanam Vidadati Purvam Yo Vai Vedanscha Prahinoti Tasmai Tamha Devam Atma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai Sharanam Aham Prapadye. Yo Brahmanam, those people who have attained Brahman. Vidadati Purvam Yo Vai Vedanscha, those who have knowledge of the Vedas, who have Yo Vai Vidadati Purvam Yo Vai Vedanscha Prahinoti Tasmai. They are the inspirers of Vedas. The Vedic stanzas or the Vedic wisdom has been a result of their deep yogic practices. As a result of their yoga, they have the inspiration for writing the Vedas or the inspirational words of the Vedas have resulted from their yogic practices. So, Yo Vai Vedancha Prahinoti Tasmai Tamha Devam, for such people who are godly, Atma Buddhi Prakasham. Atma Buddhi means one who awakens the spiritual wisdom in my heart, Atma Buddhi, within the heart, within the darkness of ignorance that is enveloping my hearts. The wisdom of such yogis is enlightening the heart. So, Tamma Devam Atma Buddhi Prakasham Mumukshurvai, those people who desired freedom. Because only people who desire real freedom and have freedom as the quest of their life, only they can share inspired words based on their meditative experiences. The Vedas are nothing but exhalations of these great yogis who got these inspired thoughts when they were in samadhi or maybe when they were deeply engrossed in meditation. The output of such Vedic stanzas, which we get as Upanishads, as Bhagavad Gita, they are the outpourings of these great yogis. So before you practice, we have to salute them. It is because of their wisdom that we are able to embark on a spiritual path. So he says, you have to first salute or do pranams to all the ancient yogis and your own guru and God, and then begin. God means the Ishta on whom you are meditating. So you first worship and send prayers all around to all the yogis of the past, of the present, and who will come in the future. You salute them because they are the people who have created this enormous spiritual wealth for us, which is still there in a very subtle way in the cosmic sphere. It is still there in the cosmos, and we are benefiting from the outpourings of wonderful inspirational wisdom of these great yogis. So first salute them, then your own guru who has been responsible for conveying the wisdom in a nutshell through the mantra and through other important guidance. He has given you a path on which you have to go forward, and then you meditate, finally merge the ancient yogis and your own guru into the Ishvara or the Lord who is seated within the heart, who is the inspirer of them all, the inspirer of your guru, inspirer of these great ancient yogis. So the idea is that without their help, without their subtle help, their presence is always there in the cosmos. So without their subtle help, we cannot hope to make any progress in spiritual life. So he says, whenever you start to practice, first salute all the ancient yogis and your own guru and God, and then begin. Dhyana is spoken of, and a few examples are given of what to meditate upon. Now we had just described what pratyahara, dharana and dhyana is. They're all pratyahara leads to dharana, which we can practice for 12 seconds. It becomes a dharana. Then we multiply it by 12. It practiced for 144 seconds. The same focus or the same concentration. When we meditate upon something for 144 seconds, it becomes dhyana. And when you multiply it by 12 and persist on that object and lose yourself in the object for more than 12 into 144 seconds, then you can say that you will enter into this samadhi as it is described in this Kurma Purana. Now, a few examples are given of what to meditate upon. Now, the Kurma Purana gives a few techniques which may not tally with what the Guru has taught us. So we have to take if it tallies with our instructions, because there are some examples he is giving. The Kurma Purana says that let us take up a few examples. So they are not exhaustive. There can be other ways of meditation, but one of the meditation methods he is giving, like for example, he says sit straight. Sit straight means the neck, the head and the trunk and the chest, they should be in a single line. So when they are in a single line, in a straight line, that is the posture which is normally recommended. Sit straight and look at the tip of your nose. Now, when you start looking at the tip of your nose, you have to just focus both the eyes, they come and try to look at the tip of the nose. That's one way of concentrating at a point which is there beyond between the two eyebrows. So that is one way of meditating, but normally we meditate at the center of the heart. So he says, later on we shall come to know how that concentrates the mind. How looking at the tip of the nose, that is one way of concentrating the mind. So Kurma Purana is asking you to meditate and look at the tip of your nose. Then, how by controlling the two optic nerves, one advances a long way towards the control of the arc of reaction and so to control of the will. Now, the crisscrossing of the optic nerves pass through they crisscross at a certain point when they reach the brain. Before they reach the brain, the eyes see certain visuals, and these visuals are conveyed to the brain very fast. It happens very fast. But when these things happen, they crisscross at a particular point, the two optic nerves. That's what the yogis have found. And once one knows where they crisscross, then they try to control both the eyes. So our vision or the object on which we are focusing, that remains in our mental horizon for a long time. So this is by controlling the optic nerves. This is one way of doing it, but this is not the only way. One advances a long way towards the control of the arc of reaction and so the control of the will. Now, on meditation, one of the important exercises one has to do is to control the willpower and use the willpower to focus the mind and not allow it to wander to other objects, just to fix the mind on one particular object. Now, that requires a tremendous willpower, and that willpower is strengthened by controlling the two optic nerves. If it is a visual object, you can concentrate on the sound also. In that case, there will be different types of meditation. But when you are concentrating on an object, whether you close your eyes or keep your eyes open, the two optic nerves come into play. Even if you imagine certain things deep inside yourself, you have to somehow focus. I mean, the process that happens is the same. The two optic nerves where they crisscross, that is where the coherent image is formed, and the more you meditate, the more that center is activated and you are able to focus your mind on that object to the exclusion of everything else. And the arc of reaction, I mean, normally when the thought comes, the reaction also comes. So this prevents the reactions from happening. Controlling the reactions is very important. It's not the action, it's the reaction to the action which is causing a lot of disturbance and karma. Karma is caused not by the action or the watching of certain things or listening to certain things. When you watch, when you listen, if you listen or watch as a witness, then there's no problem. But if the ego gets involved and you react in a particular way, the reaction causes all the disturbance and the disturbance in the mental waves, the physical disturbances, and all those are a result of our reaction. So the yogis tell you or teach us to control the reactions. You can't prevent things, objects from being focused upon. You will be seeing so many visual sights, sounds, and the sense organs will be giving you a lot of input. The input is not harmful. Once it goes to the center of the brain, then if the brain is, if the willpower is able to control these actions, then the reactions can be controlled. You don't have to react to everything. So to control the reactions is what is self-control. Self-control means you control the reactions which you give in response to some of the stimuli of the outside world. The outside world gives you certain kind of stimuli, and as a reaction, the brain centers give certain instructions and you act upon it. That is what is the results in karma. So stopping those reactions is a very, very important thing in yoga, and that stopping of the reactions is what is known as control of the willpower. The control of the will is so important. The will has to be trained to monitor, to control the reactions. If one is in control of the reactions, then when you can say his self-control is complete. He cannot be disturbed by anything in the world. It's only the reaction to the outside world, reaction to situations, reactions to people, reactions to our emotions, reactions to the knowledge that we get, which causes problems for us. If one is just a witness, if one is just mindful, one is just conscious of the world around him, then slowly its power to bind you goes away. The power of bondage or the power of attachment is because of the reaction. It's not because of the action as such. When you do certain things, you are not attached to those things. But if somebody does something and you give a reaction from within, then it results in some kind of karma or some kind of attachment. So control of the will, control of the reactions by controlling the will is an important task which Kurma Purana says. And they give a few specimens of meditation. He says, imagine a lotus on the top of the head. Now this is another type of meditation. You can meditate in the heart also. But imagine a lotus upon the top of the head, several inches up, with virtue as its center and knowledge as its stalk. So virtue is its center. All the knowledge is giving rise to yama and niyama, the virtues. The beautiful, the nice virtues which a human being cultivates in his personality, they should be imagined as the center of that flower with so many petals. Now that lotus, which is above the head and which has this virtue as the center, good qualities as the center, and knowledge as its stalk, the constant ideas, good samskaras, good thoughts, they are the stalk, because it's through the stalk that the whole flower is nourished. The sap which goes through the stalk of the flower helps the flower to remain fresh. And the center, which is the thing that is holding together all the petals, the center is very important, the center of the flower. So that center is responsible for holding the beautiful petals of the lotuses. So the petals are held together at the center, which are your virtues. Your virtues, your personality is something which holds your life together. And the stronger that personality, the nobler you are. But the stalk should be strong. The stalk which conveys the nourishment, which conveys the sap, of the nourishment which goes up to every corner of the flower of the lotus, that is known as knowledge. That is, knowledge is the stalk. The 8 petals of the lotuses are the 8 powers of the yogi. Now normally that's why we say you have to meditate on the 8 petals. 8 petals are the 8 different powers. They are powers of samyama. Samyama means concentration. When you attain to this deep meditation and you focus on each one of these petals, you get different powers. But you are not supposed to focus on that, otherwise you lose your way. The 8 petals of the lotus are the 8 petals powers of the yogi. Inside, the stamens and pistils are renunciation. The stamen and the pistils which are inside the stalk, they are not seen, but they give power and strength, and they convey the essential nutrients to the center of the lotus, to the entire lotus. So their stamens and pistils are the renunciation. If the yogi refuses the external powers, he will come to salvation. If the yogi is not enamored of or does not focus his attention merely on the petals, then he will go to the center of the flower and he will attain salvation. So he has to not to be tempted by the 8 petals, though he has to meditate on that. He has to meditate on the Ishta which is sitting on the center of that flower. So when you focus on the Ishta, the 8 powers which are there, which are represented by the 8 petals, they are not taken into consideration. They are not given an importance. They just serve as a seat for our Ishta. Ishta is the main thing because he is the central person who should attract all our attention. And then we can conveniently forget that lotus. The lotus is just in the beginning. It's just symbolic. It's the seat where our Ishta sits. Inside of that lotus, that is at the center of the lotus, think of the golden one, the Almighty, the intangible, He whose name is Om, the inexpressible, surrounded with effulgent light. Now these are the wonderful qualities or wonderful picturization which help us to meditate. Now we should not just meditate on the lotus or the lotus petals or the stalk and the stamens and the pistils. They are all our accessories. They are helps for meditation. But the essential thing is to think of the golden one, the shining Ishta, the God on whom you are meditating. On the intangible, is not tangible by your eyes. You have to bring him into focus on him as it were, create him and make him sit in the heart center. The Almighty, the intangible, either the heart center or the head, wherever it is. There are different centers. You can meditate anywhere. The intangible, He whose name is Om. So all the mantras begin with Om. So Om is the representative of the Ishta. Then there will be a bija, then there will be a name which depends on the form. If you meditate on Shiva, it is Om Namah Shivaya. If there's some other God, you will be meditating with the name of that particular God or that particular deity. But in all the cases, he should be imagined as a shining personality surrounded with effulgent light. The light is the light of wisdom. It's not just a physical light. We have to imagine that is the light which is removing all the ignorance, the darkness of ignorance which is making things very confusing for us. It is in darkness that we don't recognize things, we don't see things clearly. To see things clearly, we need light. And to get that light, we have to meditate and become one with that. We have to do our dharana, we have to do dhyana on that light, on that effulgent figure of the Ishta, and imagine that his name as he is represented by Om, which is his real name, and then the other name comes, the form of that. Om is his real nature, the name is its form, which we see, which we use as a doorway to enter into that supreme Almighty, the golden one. Meditate on that. So this is one meditation. Then another meditation is given. The same Kurma Purana, first he says meditate on the lotus on the head, or think of a space in your heart. So this is another way. The space in the heart, and in the midst of that space, think that a flame is burning. So that's another way of meditation. Instead of the lotus, you can also meditate on a flame, a big flame. Think of that flame as your own soul. And inside the flame is another effulgent light, and that is the soul of your soul, God. So it's like there are two flames, one big flame, which is you yourself, your body, the whole personality is a big flame, as it were. And that flame has been condensed, and the subtle form of that Jivatma is a flame which is represented in your heart. And in your heart, inside that flame is a smaller flame which is more effulgent, more bright, and that is the soul of your soul, God. Meditate upon that in the heart. So these are the different two different ways. Of course, you can imagine the same lotus which you imagined on the top of the head and meditate on that in the heart as well. We have this 8-petaled red lotus, and so many 16 petals, 12 petals. The different techniques are there. Now, when you meditate upon that, and as we discussed earlier, we begin with the pratyahara, then we will come to dharana. When we do dharana, we try to meditate on in this way, all these different techniques for 12 seconds. And once we are focused, once we are able to meditate for 12 seconds, then we slowly increase it. And then when you multiply it by 12, 144 seconds, if you can maintain this same current of thought, unending thought, the same wave getting repeated again and again and again so fast that it is only one continuous wave. They give the example of the oil, a thick oil when it is poured from one vessel into another. There is a continuity in that flow. Unlike water which falls in breaks, there are so many gaps when the water falls. But in oil, each molecule of the oil is attached to the other. So it appears as if a continuous flow of liquid oil is falling, thick oil, when you use a thick oil. So there is a continuity. So that thick oil, our wave should not be like those of the water. When water is pouring, it is scattered. The drops are there. Whereas when oil is poured, there is a continuous uninterrupted flow. So that flow, it is like that flow is compared to the meditative state. So when that flow of thought continues for 144 seconds, it becomes dhyana. And when that flow becomes more intense and you forget yourself in the process, then samadhi results. And it continues for a very long time in a very spontaneous way. If this dhyana happens, then it gets converted into samadhi. Now the different vrittis, as I told you, when we talked of waves are nothing but, imagine a placid lake or a pond with very calm waters. You take a small stone, you throw it inside, a small ripple is created. Take a bigger stone, a bigger ripple is created. So every object or every action, that is, every impingement on our sense organs creates a reaction. That reaction is that vritti. Vritti in Sanskrit literally means whirlpool. So when some object is thrown, Swamiji gives that example, throw a stone, a whirlpool is created. Throw another stone, another whirlpool is created. A bigger one is created if you throw a bigger stone. The splash is bigger and then a huge whirlpool is created. So these different vrittis, the thoughts are the different thoughts that come. Thoughts always come in these concentric circles. They are like vrittis. So that's why they spread all around you. That's why we say that if evil-minded people are sitting, they don't affect just either to the, either if they're, the direction of their thought is not in one direction. When they sit, when these vrittis occur, they occur in a very, like a circular whirlpool. They create waves around them and they travel a far distance, just like sound waves. If you drop something, if you see, in what is sound? you create a big, there is some friction, there is some two objects strike each other, and then it gives sound. And that sound moves in a circular manner. It travels in a circular, like a whirlpool. Similarly, similar to the dropping of a stone in a lake. So these vrittis are so contagious that anybody coming in that circle, that whirlpool, the influence is, it can go very far depending on the strength of the thought. If the thought is very strong, then these whirlpools are big, the vrittis are very strong and they go far. And then they create an impact on everybody in that circle. So also, the 5 vrittis are just a list of 5 vrittis are given. Chastity, non-injury, brahmacharya, ahimsa, non-injury, forgiving even the greatest enemy. Then this is this forgiveness is also known as titiksha. Faith, truth, satya, faith in the Lord. These are different vrittis. These are some of the different vrittis which are used as objects of meditation. Faith in the Lord is a vritti which, when you constantly repeat japa, when you constantly do prayers, the vritti of faith in the Lord is created. So just as there are vrittis of different bad vrittis, there are good vrittis like chastity, brahmacharya, thinking pure thoughts, non-injury, that is also a strong vritti, a positive vritti. Chastity is also a positivity. It can store or conserve a lot of energy. The energy of brahmacharya can be conserved if that is not wasted. So that becomes a tremendous soul power. Forgiving even the greatest enemy. So even by forgiving, you are actually stopping the reaction. Swamiji says, when a big ball hits a wall, the wall, because it is steady, it absorbs all the energy, and it absorbs all the energy, and the ball just falls. The heavier the ball, it just hits and just drops down, and it generates tremendous energy in the object which the ball hits. So when the actions come and they impinge upon our consciousness and you don't react, you store a lot of energy. If somebody is angry on you and you become angry, then you are wasting your energy. So forgiving the greatest enemy really means conservation of energy. You don't react to the things around you. The more you react, the more angry you get, or the more irritated you become. The more you react, the more reactive you are, the more energy is wasted. You will have less energy for yoga. So that is why forgiving even the greatest enemy is recommended. This is done. It's just like practicing ahimsa. You forgive and also forget the things which you would have had to bear. This is also part of titiksha. Titiksha is bearing all the troubles. Sahanam sarva dukkhanam apratikara purvakam chinta vilaparahitam sa titiksha nigadyate. What is the definition of titiksha? That is forgiving the greatest enemy or forgiving everything. The greatest task which one has to do is not to react. Now how that is done? That is done through the practice of titiksha. Sahanam sarva dukkhanam, to bear without complaining all the sufferings, physical or mental, very calmly in a stoic way. They call it stoicism, but that is just to exhibit one's bravery. But apart from that, in a genuine way, one can practice titiksha by trying to tolerate or trying to bear all this suffering. Sahanam sarva dukkhanam. Sahanam means to bear. Sarva dukkha means all types of dukkha or misery or sorrow. Apratikara purvakam, without reacting, that is non-injury, or without by forgiving the ill or the things which have been done to you. So by forgiving, you are actually conserving energy. Sahanam sarva dukkhanam apratikara purvakam, without any without rebelling or without reacting. Apratikara. Pratikara means to react. Apratikara means by not reacting. Chinta vilaparahitam. It's not enough if you don't react. You may not react, but if you keep that thing in memory and get always agitated in the mind that I should have reacted, I didn't react, that should not be there. You have to forget that incident totally. Chinta vilapa, don't think about it and don't be sorry or don't feel guilty about it or don't feel upset about it. So that memory also should be removed from the mind. That vritti, the memory vritti of revenge or getting upset or reaction should not be present. In short, there should be no reaction. So chinta vilaparahitam satitiksha. Without chinta, without regrets or without any kind of reaction, if you bear, then it becomes uh, forgiving even the greatest enemy. That is known as titiksha, truth, satya, faith in the Lord. Now these are some of the positive virtues. When you have faith in the Lord, it is not a easy thing. It has to be created as a constant wave. One wave after another of faith strengthens that wave, and more faith results in more faith. The more faith you have, the more faith you have in the repetition of the name, the prayer which you do, and the more the intensity of the prayer, the stronger the faith becomes. So it is a continuous process, and these are the different vrittis, positive vrittis, which help you. Be not afraid if you are not perfect in all of these. This chastity, this non-injury, forgiving the greatest enemy, truth, faith in the Lord, these may be 5 very important vrittis. But even if you are not perfected in some of these or many of these, don't worry. One has to go on practicing to the extent one can. Work and they will come. He who has given up all attachment, all fear and all anger. So these are the 3 qualities which are seen in such people who practice chastity, non-injury, forgiving even the greatest enemy, truth, faith in the Lord. These 5 things, if essentials of spiritual life, if they are present in any personality, and he works very hard to become perfect in these qualities, then he will give up all attachment, all fear and all anger. You'll find these are the signs that will manifest in such a person. He will be free from all attachment, unnecessary attachment, all fear and all danger, all anger, not danger, all anger. So he doesn't have a tendency to react in an angry way. Whatever may happen or whatever the instigation may be, whatever he may be tempted to react, but if he just withholds that reaction, withholds that anger, then it is a positive force stored up in your personality which you can use for higher forms of yoga. That is the idea. So he who has given up all attachment, all fear and all anger, he whose whole soul has gone unto the Lord. Because he has faith in the Lord, he spends a large portion of his time creating that wave of faith which helps him to practice all these qualities and conduct himself in the world in a very, very spiritual way. This is the spiritual strength we normally talk of. When there is faith in the Lord, the wave is so strong enough that it can subdue the other weak waves, the negative waves of sorrow, trouble, misery, ignorance and all those things. So with the help of the Lord, with the help of the effulgent Lord on whom we meditate day in and day out, these waves are created. That's the only thing we are doing when we meditate. When we meditate, we create a very, very strong wave of the Ishta or the faith in the Lord, and that faith helps us to dedicate ourselves to the Lord. That's why he whose whole soul has gone unto the Lord and who has taken refuge in the Lord, whose heart has become purified with whatsoever desire he comes, or with whatsoever desire he comes to the Lord. Now he doesn't have any desire of his own. He just believes that whatever happens is for my good. So he accepts, he is content. As Holy Mother said, contentment is the greatest virtue. That comes because we have faith in the Lord. We know that the Lord gives us the right thing at the right time. So when we get these things, whenever we are satisfied with the things which we get, then we are not attached to too many things. Then his heart becomes purified. And that happens only if one takes refuge in the Lord. He comes to the Lord, that such a person comes to the Lord, he will grant that to him. Therefore, worship him through knowledge, love, or renunciation. That is, these are the different ways. Worshipping through knowledge is Jnana Yoga, love is Bhakti Yoga, renunciation, by renouncing it is Karma Yoga or Raj Yoga, both. Because without renouncing, without controlling the thoughts, without having stopped the reactions, one cannot worship him properly, worship the Lord properly. Then a few verses are given which elaborates these qualities. He who hates none, who is the friend of all, who is merciful to all, who has nothing of his own, who is free from egoism, who is even-minded in pain and pleasure, who is forbearing, who is always satisfied and content, who works always in yoga, whose self has become controlled, whose will is firm, whose mind and intellect are given up unto me, such a one is my beloved Bhakta. So these are all the different verses of the Gita, and they have been strung together in this Kurma Purana, and all these wonderful qualities are described in the different chapters, especially in the 12th chapter. Who is a true devotee? Who is the one who truly loves the Lord? First quality is that he hates nobody. Then if he hates nobody, then he is a friend of all. There is a nice book on Swami Vivekananda, very aptly titled as Swami Vivekananda, the friend of all. So a lot of incidents are given in that book, how right from childhood he was loved by everybody, he was a friend of all, who hated no one. Such a noble person. So one who hates nobody, naturally will be the friend of all. Who is merciful to all, who has nothing of his own. He is not possessive. He doesn't want to grab things from others. So naturally he is merciful to all. And at the same time he has nothing of his own. Who is free from egoism. Now this can happen only if there is no ego. It is ego that makes people hold on to things even if they are causing terrible pain. Swamiji gives the beautiful description of Maya, that there is a mother who is so much attached to her child that a child is an evil child, he grows up to be an evil man, and he tortures and he disturbs, but still that attachment to that child doesn't go. She holds on. That is the egoism, that this child is mine. So that feeling doesn't allow a person to let go of things, doesn't allow the person to be detached. So also Dhritarashtra, the wonderful example, the whole destruction of the Kauravas was because of the attachment Dhritarashtra had towards Duryodhana, his son. He knew he was practicing adharma. He knew that will lead to the destruction of the Kaurava army and the whole. But still his attachment was so much, he led his own son to destruction. So this is what says, who is free from egoism, who is even-minded in pain and pleasure. So this is also a verse in the Gita describes this, that how pain and pleasures, agama paino anityam tam titikshasva bharata. You bear all these things because pain is not eternal, so also pleasure. Pleasure and pain will come as uneternal things. They will come, they will rise, they will go, just as the different waves that rise in a lake. So you have to cover everything with the Lord, and you have to bear all these things and allow the lake of your mind to become calm. Let the whirlpools or the vrittis of pain or pleasure come as they wish. They will come in alternately or in a sequence, or sometimes the pain will be more, sometimes the pleasure will be more. So pain and pleasure, we have no choice. They come according to our karmas, these vrittis. But one who is free, even-minded. Even-minded means he is not reactionary, either to pain or even to pleasure. When there is too much of pleasure, he doesn't jump about in joy. He just is very calmly bears that thing, enjoys that thing in a very calm fashion, or even bears the troubles, the pain which he gets in a very calm and composed way, without any reaction. So that is what is meant here, who is free from egoism, who is even-minded in pleasure and pain, and who is forbearing, who is always satisfied, who always works in yoga, We will discuss this, how to work in yoga, in the next class. Whose self has become controlled, whose will is firm, and whose mind and intellect are given up unto me. Such a one is my beloved bhakta. So these are the wonderful qualities of a true devotee or a true bhakta according to Kurma Purana. We'll discuss it in the next class. So if there are any questions, now we can take up a few questions.
Swami, can I ask you a question, please?
Yes, sure.
Swami, what is the difference between self-esteem and ego?
Oh, self-esteem, yes.
And ego. So, for example, your self-esteem, what you think of yourself in the world, as in, I guess
Yes, I understand. But that is not true self-esteem. That is a self-esteem. These are the different labels which we desire for ourselves. We want people to recognize us as rich or strong or empowered or powerful or wealthy. There are so many things which form our idea of self-esteem. So our ideas of self-esteem may not be the real self-esteem that one. The real self-esteem is the pride that one has, that one is one with the Supreme Self. So that self-esteem is not bad. When you talk of self-esteem, what is the kind of self you are identifying yourself with? If the self is a very narrow idea of yourself, if you have, say for example, the self-esteem of a miser is money. So he thinks he has a wonderful self-esteem if he has plenty of money and to spare. So wealth becomes a precondition for his self-esteem. So that is his idea of self. So that self-esteem is nothing but it's a kind of ego manifesting itself as self-esteem. So in that case, the ego itself becomes a problem for that person who is thinking the self-esteem is something which is limited or narrow. But the real self-esteem, if one is identified with the self, then there is no place for the ego. The ego comes only at the grosser levels. When you go, even the subtle ego is there, but when you transcend that, when you meditate, when you lose the subject and merge yourself in the object of meditation, then the ego goes, and that self-esteem is the self-esteem which Thakur says the ripe ego. He gives a difference between the ripe ego and the raw ego. So the raw ego is the stupid ego which identifies with gross things, with transient things. But the ripe ego helps you to consider yourself as the handmaid of God or the servant of God or the child of God. So that kind of ego where yourself is associated with the Supreme Self, that self-esteem is good. So that is the basic difference between self-esteem and ego. Okay?
Thank you, Swami. That's helped me greatly.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Is there any other question? Yes.
I had a question. Just trying to relate this to the Jivatma example when you're talking about in the heart.
Yes.
Meditation. Like in Vedanta, there's this like antakarna, and I want to know like how does that antakarna relate?
Antakarna is not Jivatma. Antakarna is instrument which comprises of the mind and the senses, the inner senses, not the external senses. We saw antakarana means the instrument of your interaction with the world outside. So when you interact first through your sense organs, not the subtle sense centers, not the sense organs. Organs are the eyes, that is not antakarana. But the eye center in the brain or in the mind, that is antakarana. The sense of smell, the sense of sight. So all these form part of the antakarana. Antakarana means the inner causes. Outer causes are the hand, the eye, the ear and all those things. They can be seen. But antakarana cannot be seen. They are the motive powers, or they are the powers which animate these outer organs. So that is antakarana. It has nothing to do with the jivatma. Jivatma is made up of many things, and antakarana is one of the components or constituents of jivatma. So when you meditate on the big flame and the smaller flame inside, the big flame is not just antakarana, it is everything. It is you have to imagine that it is the entire inner personality of yours, including the gross, the body also. So everything has to be imagined. The big flame is representative or symbolic of your entire personality, and the smaller flame inside, which is brighter, is the consciousness, supreme consciousness, which does not have an antakarana, which does not have a body, which does not have, it's beyond all the koshas. That is how you should meditate. That is the difference between jiva and antakarana. Okay?
Okay, thank you. That helps a lot. Thank you, Maharaj. Just Krishna Hari Om.
Yeah, Hari Om.
Pranam Maharaj.
Namaste.
Namaste. You mentioned at the start the one mantra for the ancient rishis and
Yes, yo brahmanam vidadati purvam, yo vai
yes,
vedansya prahinoti tasmai, tam adevam atma buddhi prakasham, mumukshur vai sharanam aham prapadye. Means I worship all those. Yes. What is your question?
well, more of a, request really. Would you be able to send this on WhatsApp, this mantra?
Oh, yes, yes. I will send. I'll try to get the meaning also, the exact word by word meaning, and send you. This is a prayer we normally chant, acknowledging our debt to our rishis, the divine people who have given us the Shastras and the Vedas. So every day it is a good idea to acknowledge our gratitude to these people, because of whom we have this Vedanta, these Vedas and all the noble ideas all over the world which we have, the spiritual masters. So you acknowledge our or give thanks or acknowledge our gratitude to these people. So I'll send you the verse with the meaning. Okay?
Yes, thank you, Maharaj.
Yes.
Pranam Maharaj.
Namaste.
I also would like to request the Chinta Vilas verse.
Chinta Vilapa Rahitam. Yes.
Yeah, that one.
You want that with the meaning?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, that is the definition of titiksha, forbearance, as given by Shankaracharya in his Vivek Chudamani. So Vivek Chudamani is a text by Shankaracharya where he says, what is the definition of titiksha? First he says titiksha has to be practiced. Then what is titiksha? So he is defining. So all the virtues have been defined in that book. What is ahimsa? What is all these things? So there are a set of verses in Vivek Chudamani, and one of the verses is Sahanam Sarva Dukkhanam Apratikara Purvakam Chinta Vilaparahitam Sa Titiksha Nigadyate. So this is what is titiksha. This is the definition of titiksha in Sanskrit. So you want the meaning also of that?
Yes, please.
Yes, yes. I will post. Any other question, or I'll conclude for today? Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Thank you, Maharaji. Namaste.
Namaste.
Pranam Maharaj.
Namaste.
Pranam.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Pranam,
Thank you,
Guruji.
Swami.
Thank you.
Namaste, Swamiji. Thank you.